I met Mandy originally, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mandy, later, but I believe it was at a Space for Connection gathering in the UK. And we've connected on and off. Yeah, is that right? I thought it was. My memory serves me right. On and off, we've connected over the years. So Mandy has worked in health and social care services, in particular learning disability services, for 30 years. And she's an experienced facilitator and trainer. And she told me she loves to work with frontline workers. So we'll probably talk a bit about that on the session too. And then Lavinia Moore, also known as Vinny, is an independent social work improvement consultant with over 30 years experience in child protection. And she has a specialism in domestic violence and safeguarding. So she's presently managing a large team within the child protection realm in a very tough borough, I understand, in the UK. So again, we're going to hear lots more about that in this session, which, as I said, very inspiring. So welcome, ladies. It's lovely to...
Hello. Thank you for inviting me.
I'll let you speak now. I've done all the stuff that I need to do. Yeah, lovely to have you with us today. I'm very grateful for your time. So I want to kick off, as I do always, with asking you kind of how... So in terms of Community Begins With You, like how have you come to be actually working in community? What I haven't shared so far actually is that all our speakers have been nominated. And so what was coming to mind then was to say, so you've been nominated to come along and speak on this community webinar series, Tell You Something. So I'd love to, Mandy, would you like to kick us off with that?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't know we'd been nominated. Wow. It's interesting. I've been, as you say, working in health and social care sort of all my working life. And I'm pretty sure I got into that from a sense of community, but also from a sense of when none of us are broken. And I knew that so clearly. I mean, my dad was disabled. And I didn't even realize that until I was about 8 years old. So disability just didn't seem to exist for me, really. I could only see the person beyond their disability or beneath their disability. So it seemed natural for me to go into nursing. When I'd finished qualifying as a nurse, I went into learning disability nursing because I still love the community sense of community. And I love working with families. And for a number of years, my work was what we call in the UK person-centred planning, which was really putting the person first at the centre of a support network. And it always made sense to me that the person had everything they needed as long as they had the right support. So nobody was broken. And the whole idea of love, although I didn't use that language then, now that's what I do. I just see this connection through love with the individual. But for many years, I still thought that everything outside needed to change so that the person could, be the wonderful person that they were. When I came across the principles, it kind of turned my world upside down, really. And that's when I really did see that it's all about connecting. That's all we need to do. And from that, I started wanting to work with the frontline workers, particularly social workers, nurses, teachers, youth workers. So although I don't work for an organisation at the moment, I work for myself. I do programmes within those settings, anywhere that will take me, really, because supporting the workforce to me is really, really important. And often, because most of them are in that kind of work because they want to help. They're in that work because they can see that they've got compassion and they want to help. But I also know they're working in quite difficult situations, and Vinny will talk more about that in a minute, I'm sure. So actually, the more we can sustain people and help them with their own kind of resilience and their own understanding of what's going on, the better for the people they're working with. So, but the family thing interests me. I just think we're all family. And once we realise that we're all connected anyway, we're all exactly the same. It almost takes the idea of family out of the equation.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of seeing it. Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Mandy. That's a great start. Brilliant. I've got things to pick up on there.
Mm-hmm.
So Vinny, same question to you.
I think if I thought about social work, that I would say I fell into it around 35 years ago. But actually, it's interesting because I didn't link that there was violence in my home. My father was violent. I never really linked that to the fact that I specialise in domestic violence and I'm a child protection social worker and have been for many years. So it's quite interesting when you look at the connections and how we're connected. For me, as Mandy said, it's about families. There are, because of underlying issues which are happening, that people are finding themselves with not enough food to eat, with pressures that society brings, with and unable to cope with how they see their life has panned out. And for me, the families I work with are the families that have become so angry, have become so out of control, that have become so disappointed and unhappy that they believe that they don't believe that they have a belief system, but what they're doing is they are in turns targeting the children of their family or their partners as the cause of their unhappiness, problem, disappointment. And so I work with frontline teams that are working with families who have harmed their children, young person, or with young people who are harming themselves and others in society. And what the general way of working with them is to try and fix them by putting put them on courses, locking them up, prison, custody, removing children. So this is something I'm working with all the time, but it's actually, when I found the principles, I've always believed it was the connection that was the most important thing working with children, families, young people. But actually it's about the only way we can sustain change is from the inside out. The only way anyone can get an understanding that the way they behave towards their children, or the way they behave as parents, or the way they behave as young people isn't working for them, and they're not getting what they want from life, is by them gaining an insight to how their thought process, their thinking is impacting on their behaviour. So I can go more deeper than that if anybody wants me to, but generally it's about a belief system. The violent men that I've worked with over the years and still work with believe that their partners are the cause of their unhappiness. Their partners are the cause of everything that's wrong in their life. The people that harm children believe the children are the cause that everything's wrong in their life. And actually, the change comes when they see things differently, from insight, from a different understanding and a different awareness of how the system works. And I'm in a very privileged position that I work with frontline workers that are working, and I sometimes work with the people if I have to step in and it's something that's quite serious. But having that understanding and knowing that we all have an innate wisdom that we can tap into at any time if we're aware of it, to me, is something that's the magic of the three principles. No, it's funny because you never know what you're going to say, and it was never going to say that. was, really interesting.
It is interesting, isn't it? I'm sitting here just like dropped into such a beautiful space as you're talking, Vinny.
Okay.
Yeah, just beautiful. Well, you set the scene for us wonderfully, as did Mandy, of course. And both of you have mentioned the three principles, the principles. And I know, Vinny, you spoke a little bit about, for me anyway, on a personal level, what the principles are pointing to. But maybe, I'll hand this one to you, Mandy, to just give a little, if you wouldn't mind giving a brief explanation of when we're talking about the three principles, for somebody that's listening that might not have any understanding of what we're talking about. I think it would be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. This is always where we go completely blank. I suppose for me, if I'm talking to somebody that really doesn't know what I'm talking about, they're very new to the principles, I really do start by just opening up connection with them. And I'd say that's from mind, which is one of the three principles, the power of mind. We're already connected through this universal energy, God, whatever we want to call it. So there's that kind of absolute unconditional knowing that the person that I'm talking to is exactly the same as me. And so people feel that, they feel that energy, and they feel that. We can call it love, but we can use any words for it. But actually, when I know that the person sitting opposite me is exactly the same as me, how can I not love them? And I think people start to feel love themselves. And when they start to feel that, the inevitable question comes up, well, why do I sometimes feel so awful? And that's where we can go on to talk about thought, the power of thought, that actually we're thinking beings, that we have thousands and thousands of thoughts coming through our heads all the time. And some of those thoughts we pay attention to, and we actually live those thoughts. We experience those thoughts and believe them to be true. And certainly a lot of the families that I've worked with in the past, and people with disabilities or labels, they actually have so many stories, and they can't see themselves through the stories, the labels. I'm broken, I've got ADHD, I've got whatever. So they actually, the most powerful thing is actually to sit with them, knowing that we can see through that isn't actually who they are. So teaching the principles to people is often something I don't really do straight away. It's more of a felt experience. And then we can talk about what that feeling is, where that feeling's coming from. And actually supporting people to realize that the feeling's coming from them. That's who they are. And it's so empowering to people when they start to see, actually, I'm okay. So that probably didn't explain the principles, but it's something that I suppose it's a felt experience. The three principles, it's describing this amazing universal power. The fact that we think we're something different, and that takes us away temporarily from that. It doesn't take us away from the power because it's always there, but we can feel very separate. And that's where the sense of family and community is so helpful. That if we, sorry, I'll stop talking in a minute, but if we're out in the community, whatever the community is just who we are, and the fact that we're all connected. The more we're in community, living through it, the more people pick up on that. And it kind of spreads. I say it's a bit like a virus. It kind of spreads. It has this amazing ripple effect. That actually, whether it's the guy in the supermarket or a neighbour or whoever, when we're in that place of feeling connected and feeling love, we can't help but share that.
No, you did a great job of explaining what. And the thing is, it's always going to be a personal experience of the principles, because they're visible and touchable and formless. So we can only speak our own experience.
And if I can just add, Sheila, that whoever I'm working with, what I don't do is go in and start off with an explanation about the principles.
Yeah.
It's, for me, it works that connecting and finding out what's going on for them first. What's your life like? Like Vinny was saying, some of the people that we work with are in really tricky situations. They don't want to hear about the principles straight away.
Well, that kind of leads me on to something else that came up for me when you were both speaking is, how was it? So Vinny, and I read your bio and it said 30. Was that? Or maybe that was Mandy. 30 years. I can't remember, but it's a long time. So pre coming across the principles that we're talking about now, what's been the difference for you in the way that you've been doing the work that you do and the results that you've seen? And if you want to share a story along the way, that'd be wonderful, about the difference.
Yeah, I think about, when I think about, I was always a theory junkie. So I loved it. Because I did my social work degree, and then I studied psychology, and then I studied counselling, psychotherapy, and NLP, studied NLP practitioner, and brief therapy and everything. And I was always a theory junkie. And so because of a personal issue that happened to me and my family, I came across the principles by a family member having gone through a really difficult time and going somewhere and bringing that's how I got it, from a connection from a member of my family. And I saw that when I first saw it about 5 years ago. I looked at the principles as another theory. It was going to go in my toolbox. So I was really happy because I had all my theories there, and I had the 3 principles in there, and that was another theory. Now, what happened with other theories and with other models of psychology, psychotherapy, counselling, NLP, everything was great, but there wasn't a sustainability to it. Everything worked, but it only worked for a brief period. So what I found is, when I was working with families, we do cognitive behavioural therapy, about changing their thinking, rethinking, but that would only last till they got some more thinking. And then brief therapy was, the miracle question, what will happen? But that only lasted for a limited time. So what I did was I took myself off to learn about it, and that's where I met Mandy, because I did a year's practitioner course, and Mandy was my mentor. I was very, very privileged to have Mandy. And it took me, so what I got initially, what for me was that the thought-feeling connection. I cannot have a feeling without a thought connection. And I was believing everything that was coming through on my thinking. So my hypothesis of 100,000 thoughts a day, some of them were completely and utterly bonkers, but I was believing them. And then what would happen is, if I believed them and I acted on them, then I would find that my life wouldn't turn out the way I really wanted it to. I would find myself doing things that I didn't want to do, but I didn't know how I got there. So what happened when the principles came into my life was, I recognised that actually I thought a load of old rubbish, and I actually believed it. And for me, it was about, it's really difficult to put it into language, but my life has become so simple, but it was also the hardest thing to understand. So it's about, we live in the experience of thought. And I heard today, thought is a construction, not an instruction. And I love that. So for me, how I translated that with families is very much about, so if I'm working with a violent man who's getting a lot of thinking about that he needs to be, the way that he's going to feel good is if he releases his violence onto his partner. The challenge to that is, for me, is then gaining an understanding how just because you think it doesn't mean you have to act on it. It's not an instruction. It's actually an illusion. And that transforms lives, and I've seen that transform lives for years now. It's just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And part of that is, for me, is because I got rid of a load of thinking. When I when I work with families and when I work with people, there's the space, but I'm not clogged up with thinking in the space between it. There's a connection. And that connection is absolutely wonderful. It's beautiful. And I don't have judgment in that connection. I don't have my chattering in that connection. And it's about everybody, we all live in separate realities. And I then have a greater understanding of the reality of that person. And I'm able to challenge if it is negative thought patterns, and if it is something that's really, really, really destroying them in their life and really giving them really what terrible experiences. I challenge it, and what I do is it's showing people where their experience comes from. They then can make the decision whether they want to do it differently or not. And if they don't want to do it differently, it's like I had a family in last week. If you don't want to do it differently, I have got no investment in that, because we will take their children away if they're not going to do it differently, because they've been physically abusive and they've seriously harmed their children. But they do have the opportunity to do it differently. All is not lost. They're still human. It's about keeping the humanness. People don't do these things. They don't do these things because they're evil. They do it because they've got a lot of mucked up thinking about it.
Yeah, I get that. Karen's with us again. Thank you, Karen. She said thought is a construction, not an instruction. She loves that.
Mm-hmm.
It's really very brief statement, isn't it? But really speaks volumes. Like, I'm going to come back to you, Benny, and ask you some more questions for sure. But I want to jump over to Mandy again. So I'm going to use the how. I'm going to come up with a how question now, because I know this is very common for people, and of course I'm kind of playing listeners, viewers, what people want to hear about. So you're self-employed, you said earlier on, which I know, and you have been for many, many years, right? How do you go about getting your...
Yeah.
It's kind of a really jump right in there, straightforward, go for a question, if you like, because I know that a lot of practitioners, people who come across the principles and they're really touched and their lives change and they really want to go out and share with their communities in different settings. It might be homeless shelters, as Patty was saying on the last session, or it might be with addicts, or it might be with youth. How do you go about getting the work that you do?
Yeah, it's interesting. What I don't do is, or what I haven't done is produced a brochure and then tried to sell it to people. It really is about connecting and being. That sounds again like a doing, and it's kind of not. It's about knowing that we're connected anyway. So I have conversations with people. So it might be people that I used to work with, or it's just anywhere, having conversations and then developing that. So a lot of the work that I've done, it might be through families. That I did some work at a special needs college. There was a family that I knew, and their son was at the college. So I said, might the college be interested in the work I do? So I ended up doing a program there. So I think it's kind of softly catchy monkey, or whatever it's called. It's actually having our eyes open. It's almost like leaning back into love and just seeing what opportunities are there, because the opportunities are all there, but for our thinking that we have to do it in a different way. So I do write programs for people, but they're always bespoke depending on what their requirements are. My ideal is to do 2 consecutive days and then a follow-up day a month later. That doesn't always happen. Some days I only get half a day, and it's like, that's okay, whatever I can do. And the name of what I offer can change. So one college, my program was called a resilience program. They said, we don't have a budget for resilience. So I said, what do you have a budget for? They said health and well-being. So we just crossed the name out, renamed it.
Yeah.
So it's about not being precious about anything that we're offering, and also not thinking that I've got something that they don't have, because there's such an arrogance in there. It's actually saying to people, what's going on for you at the moment? Is there any way that I can help? So it really is about having conversations and finding out from people how we can serve, how we can help. And that can be in a myriad of ways, including, I mean, I think it was Patty, was it, that volunteers?
Mm-hmm.
I'm about to start doing some voluntary work, well, more voluntary work with some adults with learning disabilities, because I get so much from it. You know, it's such a feel-good place that why wouldn't I? But it's also going in with my eyes open. Just knowing that we're all the same. But connected with that, I think, is that understanding that a lot of the people that I work with, the frontline staff, they really do think that it's everything outside of them that's making their job so difficult. And I used to think that as well. If only we changed this procedure, that legislation, then everything would be fine. But as we were talking about earlier, when people start to realise change comes from within, you can just feel the responsibility drop away from them. And then they can get on with the job that they love doing.
Mm.
And they become more able to respond to crises. So they don't feel the sense of responsibility, but they become more able to respond. And that's just lovely to see. And word of mouth, of course.
Mm.
So there's no clear kind of schedule or format.
You have no formula.
No formula. Yeah.
Steps you can follow.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not surprised about, but I know that that's often a question, especially with the Centre for Sustainable Change. They get asked that a lot. You know, how?
I'm sure the how to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think if we can forget we've got something that you haven't, the first step is knowing we're all exactly the same. I think that once we really know that, then the implications of that are enormous. We become more courageous, we become more creative, we become, I don't know, it becomes easier.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I do share a lot of my programs and things with people. I'm quite happy to do that if people are, wanting to see how it's written or whatever. I'm really happy to do that. Yeah.
That's very generous, Mandy. Thank you. Yeah. So people will get your details at the end, or they may already have them. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And Vinny and I have done some work together, and we're going to be doing more work together. So there's a real kind of concerted effort there. Yeah.
All right. Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit. What have you been up to together then?
Well, designing programs. Well, Vinny, do you want to designing programs? Yeah.
It's for me. It's about. I don't talk about the principles at work, because if I did, they'd think I'd gone all woo-woo, and it's such a doctrine now in local authorities. It's so structured and systems led that it has to be rebranded. So for anyone who wants to do some work, it's find out, get Community, get the Guardian on a Wednesday and see what people are wanting, and then just brand it. Obviously, everything I do, I went to a local authority. I did a private day 2 weeks ago, and they wanted mindfulness. So they phoned me up and said, "Oh, can you come and do it? Can you come and do it?" And I did. But it was the 3 principles. I just did principles. We are the principles. So it was everything about thought in the moment. And I got heckled. We talked about that. I got heckled by a couple of psychotherapists who thought I was absolutely bonkers. And how dare I? Because unless, they completely disagreed. And for them, I spoke to them afterwards very nicely. And I understand they have a belief system that somebody has to go twice a week to them and talk about their problems for 5 years before they even get any relief from symptoms. And there's me saying that actually the only way you're going to bring that trauma back is if you keep talking about it, and you'll just keep bringing it back. So I had a day of it, and at the end, I don't think management were too happy with me because they couldn't see where the mindfulness set in. I got a little bit oh, this is so hard. There were people in there that really got it. I could see that they just sat in it. They sat in their well-being, and we talked about that they were a self-correcting system, and they'd always have their well-being. Nobody could take that away from them. There was a percentage that I could see, and then there were people that became really angry. You know, how dare I say that the problem, you know, things were happening were not from the outside in, but that you know, that the manager wasn't making them not sleep at nights, that their manager wasn't making them ill, that the work wasn't making them have a terrible home life. So if you come in and you say, well, actually, do you always have a terrible home life? Is your manager always awful? Well, no. Well, what happens on the days that your home life's okay and your manager's okay? Well, nothing. Well, maybe that's something to do with your thinking at the moment of that time, because some days you love someone and some days you can't stand someone. But the only thing that's changing is you're thinking about them. They're no different. So it produced quite a bit of anger. It produced quite a bit of good stuff. And it was quite difficult. But so for anyone out there, it's just brand it. You know, if people want mindfulness, call it mindfulness. If they want team building, call it team building. But actually, what you do is you do everything around working about the principles. That's basically it. We, you know, obviously Mandy and I trained as well in the clarity model. So with Jamie, and that's I use that because that brands principles in a really, really sort of concrete, professional, corporate way, and I can get that in much quicker a lot of times than I can if I talk about. Obviously, it's all Sid Banks, but if I talk about the principles, I said they do look at me like, oh, yeah. And the other thing that I love about it is that what everyone thinks about me isn't my problem, and that is wonderful. Because, you know, there was 180 people in that room, and say maybe 90 of them couldn't stand me. That wasn't anything to do with me. It's to do with their thinking in the moment.
That's a really big one.
That was brilliant.
That is so helpful, isn't it? It's really helpful.
That's brilliant.
Because what I hear in what you say there, Vinny, is it basically taking the personal out of it completely. There is no.
No, people know me. I mean, you know, there was one woman who was heckling me and saying this was rubbish and that was rubbish, and I just stayed as I was. But you know, for her, in her reality, you know, nobody was going to be okay unless they went and had 2 sessions with her a week for 5 years and explained about their awful past and what happened to them. And I respected that. That's what her belief was. But she was really, really angry and saw me as irresponsible, that I was saying that actually, if everything comes from our thinking in the moment, that you know, I love the full stop, the microneural full stop. You know, if you're going to keep reenacting it, then actually, the person that caused the problem in the first place, I'm saying to her, are they here today? He said no. So I said, well, why are you having a reaction? There's no one here to have a reaction to. You're just thinking about that person. And that was really interesting. Really interesting. So really, it's just love it. Just fun as well, isn't it? It's fun as well. Yeah. It is fun. It is.
Yeah. Well, that's brilliant. Thanks, Vinny. Yeah. So Mandy.
Yeah.
What in terms of sharing? So you two have been sharing. You're going to share, and you're going to. I remember when we were having came to mind when we were having our chat last week or whenever it was, a couple of weeks ago. You mentioned something about going under the radar. It's like people talk about needing to change systems. I think you did touch on it earlier on.
Yeah.
This, you know, people think we've got to change systems, like the government needs to change, the schools needs to change, the NHS medical system needs, health systems need to change. And yes, on some level that's true. And in the meantime, I remember you saying, yeah, but we can get under the radar. We can do this. There are holes. I think you said to me like there are holes and the gaps where we can go and fill in. I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
makes me sound really sneaky. Or
I think you used the word ninja, Mandy.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it does feel a bit like that sometimes. Well, I think one of the things that I realized, I thought I had to be a certain type of person to make change. So a campaigner or a battler or a whatever, and that's just not in my nature. So I always felt that I wasn't doing enough to change the system before I came across the principles. My way of working with people, I think, is much softer, and I think there's a place for everything. We need the campaigners and we need the battlers, definitely, but my way of working just isn't like that. So actually I realized that was okay, and that was quite a big thing for me, that actually but by connecting with people, again, it's being open to any opportunities. So one of the things that I realized is that although I often do work on my own, I do one-to-one work with people, but when I go into the organizations, I usually go on my own, but actually I really like going in with somebody else. So I've got 2 or 3 things coming up, working with youth services, a local college, where I'm going in with somebody else, and I'll go in with different people. I quite like that, bouncing ideas off each other. But I think there's also remembering that we're not in control. So if I try and force something, I think I mentioned to you, there's one lady who's in charge of commissioning for one of the children's services. So she's got quite a big job in the local authority. And I've met up with her over the last couple of years, probably about 6 times. And we meet up for coffee. I talk about what I do. She's really interested. And she's like, oh, no, I'd love to get you in. And she talks about a big program working with all the social workers. And then I don't hear back from her. And then I have another coffee and the same thing happens. And it's like, well, just stay with it. If I think I'm in control of that, then I'm mistaken. There's a higher power than me that's kind of nudging me in different directions. So sometimes it's kind of just let go, but at the same time, be aware of the opportunities. And this sort of leads on from what Vinny was talking about. I worked with a group of social workers who worked in a day service for adults with learning disability. And out of the 12 of them, 2 of them, it completely changed the way that they worked with the people they were working with. They saw them completely differently. And if it's only 1 or 2 people, the ripple effect of that is enormous. So I don't know if that answers your question. That again, there's no formula. And the more I take my foot off the accelerator, the more things show up for me, it seems.
I didn't realise I was muted. I muted myself. Yeah, it does answer the question. It does. Yeah, it does. It does. And it kind of, when you were speaking, I thought it was a little bit like Vinny was saying, wasn't it, about mindfulness, just rebrand it. It's kind of the ninja thing, like you go in under the radar.
Yeah, we have to, I think. That's because, well, I was just going to say, actually, there's a group of workers that I did some work with, and they're frontline workers, again, with adults with learning disabilities. And what they picked up on really quickly was the whole idea of separate realities. So I didn't really explain the principles, but they understood the separate realities bit, and they understood that we're all the same. And because I only had half a day session with this group. So it was like, what can you do with half a day? So there was a bit of intake, what's going on for you? And then we talked about separate realities and the fact that we're all the same. And it completely changed their way of supporting the people they were working with. So, you just do the best you can. Yeah, there's no perfect way. We are perfect. And the people we're working with are perfect. It's all perfect, yeah, until we say it should be something other.
Yeah. Get that. Thank you. Yeah. Cool. Vinny, I know that I just would like to hear a little bit more about your work. So you're working. I remember when we were talking before, Mandy pointed out to me, you were very humble and say, I manage like 7 or 8 or 9 people or something. Then Mandy pointed out to me, no, actually, Vinny, you manage this whole section of people, right?
Well, it's what I'm doing at the moment. I go into local authorities. I work for myself. So I go in as an improvement consultant. And so my last job was great. I had a job in the Midlands, and I went in pre-Ofsted, but I was a coach and mentor. So that was great. So I went in as an improvement coach and mentor for social work, but actually it was fantastic because I just talked about the principles in a different language, obviously, under the radar, as Mandy was saying. So I ninjaed the principles in, and the response to that was great. And then I get a call from, because I've got because I've been around so long, some people that work with people, and they've all got into directors in different local authorities. Then I got London Borough call me, and I went into them and set up the frontline systems, just set them up for a little bit with social workers. And now, so what I've been doing for the last few years is I manage the teams that manage the children that are on child protection plans and children that have been taken into care. So looked after children in care. So it's the most serious cases. So what it is, and in London, you know, I'm in the London Authority, and I've been in a few, and it's around. We have around about 300 plus children on child protection plans, and about 450 who have been taken away in care. And this isn't children who've been adopted. This is children that's at any one time social workers are working with to see if we can we can have the impact and influence in families that they can keep their children. And when they can't, and they become looked after, it's about then rehabilitation. Is there any way they can be rehabilitated? One of the things that I didn't have great experience of, but I've got more experience of the last 3 years, has been because of Rotherham CSE. So I manage all the CSE service, and I manage. Just FGM, which I don't know if anyone's aware of, but child sexual exploitation, and I also review young children, if children are under 13 and they have to go into secure, I manage that and do their reviews over the country, because they're placed all over the country because they're either too dangerous to stay out in community, or community is going to be too dangerous for them. There are lots of children that have threats to life, and they're the ones that we removed out of the area in terms. So it's that high end. It's a really high end. And what happens for me is the people that are doing the work can get really, really lost in and overwhelmed in what to do. I call it the snowblow with thinking. They just get so overwhelmed, and I sit them down, and it's about what's wisdom saying? Tell me about your professional wisdom. What's happening? What's going on? When you go in, when you speak to that parent, when you sit down with those parents, when you look in those child's eyes, what's going on? What's your professional wisdom? And it's a parallel process, really, because I mean the Children Act I can read off the back of my hand because I've worked with it so long. So it's a legislation that says we have to protect children, but within that we also have we keep our humanness. It's about keeping human, and we're going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes, you know. It's unfortunately we are going to make mistakes. They're going to go out there and hike host loads, and there are going to be mistakes made. And when a social worker makes a mistake, it's horrendous because of the way the profession is treated as well. You know, sort of a doctor makes a mistake and they don't get the publicity and they don't get the damnation that a social worker will get. So it's quite a fear-based profession. And if I can do anything I can to support the professionals on the front line, if I can do anything that can give them the confidence to do the job, to give them the confidence to trust their wisdom, then to me that's one job that I've done well. Yeah, you know, if it's just one, that's really good. And young people, when I visit young people, I had to go to a long way 2 weeks ago to visit one of the young persons who's been locked up, and they said, look, we'll go in with guard. You know, have 2 security men to go in. And I just, I looked at it, and my wisdom was, no, I'll be fine. He went, well, and so I had two, and I sat down there. I connected with this 13-year-old who's been stabbed 27 times. And it's very much about, and listen to his story. And I wanted to cry, but I didn't, because that would have been all about me. I just listened to his story, and he was locked up under welfare grounds because he was 13. So it wasn't, and that connection, and had no one in the world. And it's, well, what do you want? And he was telling me what he wanted. And I said, well, let's see what we can do. And actually, it's transforming. I get feedback, and the change is amazing. It makes me smile. It just makes me smile, because he didn't think there was any other way other than kill or be killed on the streets of London. And they've got nowhere to go, because obviously you don't know, but youth clubs are being closed down. So it's it's just one young man that is now living out of England, and life is being transformed, and that's wonderful. There was one before him that's doing really, really well as well. So I'm told I over-identify. I get too involved, thank God I do. But so I could, so I have to do it all. It's again under the radar. So yeah, it's connection, and it's wisdom, and it's human. Being human. Just human.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, there's a lot out there in the world that looks very tough, right?
Sheila, can I just add something to that?
Of course.
Because there's a couple of things. One, Vinny used the word involved, and I can remember when I was doing my training, nursing and social work, it was don't get too involved. And that was a professional guidance. Don't get too involved because you might lose yourself, and understanding how the principles work allows us to get involved again through connection. So that's just, the implications of that are phenomenal. But also you can see why we need to be supporting people like Vinny. Actually it is life-changing having this kind of understanding and being able to go and work with and alongside some of the most challenged young people and their families. I mean, some of them are in such desperate straits, and Vinny just kind of smiles and gets on with it. But actually, the more we can support the workforce to get involved and to be connected with all the support they need to do that, it's got to help, isn't it? It is life-changing.
Yeah.
So what strikes me is that, because the word care comes in for me, it's like these are caring professions, right? And yet when I heard Vinny say, she's getting too involved, that feels to me like, oh, you care. Because you care, you want to help. Absolutely. And yet in these caring professions, you're told not to get in. Don't care too much is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Well, that made sense to me before I understood the principles, really, because it did feel I didn't really understand what was going on with the connection. And I can remember thinking that I could break, I could burn out, I could whatever, that I didn't have the resilience, that I was breakable. And now I see that completely differently. And when I see that, common sense and wisdom kicks in, and I'll go and talk to somebody, or it's not such an isolated environment. So some of the teams that I've been working with, because a lot of them, they can work from home, they can work mobile. So they would work from home because they were all so stressed. And now they're coming into the office, the shared team room, and they're actually hanging out together. So I didn't know that would be one of the side effects of it. But but actually they're becoming a community again instead of being isolated. So yeah. But yes, it is a caring profession, and there are a lot of people in the profession who don't seem very caring as well. So, you know, that needs to be sorted out as well. I don't want anyone thinking, you know, that we're just seeing everybody as, because people forget or lose that caring side of themselves temporarily or whatever. And there is some abuse that goes on, and we have got the legislation and the procedures in place to help with that. But again, this is change from within. If we can really look at changing this from within, there won't be room for, this is my my dream, there won't be room for the abuse and the poor practice. Yeah.
That's kind of that's your big picture vision. Is that what you mean?
My big picture vision. Yeah. Then I get all overwhelmed, but yes, we start. It just starts with one person, which is me.
Everything starts with one step, one person, one voice, one. Yeah, I mean, and you know, you've both mentioned the ripple effect. I think today we've actually got one of our sessions is called that, the ripple effect.
Okay, yeah.
Which is interesting because that's what I see. It is one person, one voice. Yeah. And I mean, like Vinny was been talking about the example of the 13-year-old, and imagine if there's change there, then that's going to ripple out into his peers or to his family or wherever he happens to be, whether it's in a care home. I mean, that will ripple out, won't it? Because people feel them.
Yeah, and that's sort of back to supporting the families within the community that I know is the title. That's a biggie for me, is actually because families can also feel very disempowered and labelled and broken, especially going through the special education system. So actually, that's what we're doing. We're just supporting. We're all family, and we're all connected. We're all community. So everybody that we talk to, who knows where they're going to take that and what they're going to do with that.
Yeah. Well, checking my questions box. Nobody. We've got people listening to us, and nobody. We must be covering everything so well. There are no questions. You can send comments in, guys, too, if anything's landing or you've got anything, you know, anything to share. That would be nice too. So you mentioned earlier on, I remember the word sustainability, and obviously this is, you know, the Centre for Sustainable Change kind of impacted me. How do you? I know you touched on it briefly, but I'd just like to go in that direction a little bit more. Classia said she's loving the conversation, thanks. So she's going to leave us alone, but we'll keep talking. Patty says, I'm feeling like I'm listening to real life superheroes. Oh,
that's lovely.
That's really nice. Yeah, where's your cape? No, I agree. When I was talking with you earlier, I thought that too. So yeah, this word sustainability, this direction of sustainability.
I think for me, it's about, if I look generically, the social work profession isn't working. We can't, you know, there's vacancies, people don't stay, they change, they qualify and then they can't do it. And so for me, the sustainability is that I have worked for a number of years, especially the last 5 years with the principals. I have people working with me that want to work with me. They want to work on my teams, and the reason they want that, they tell me, is because there's no blame culture. It's support. It's the humanness. There's no bullying. When they say they're tired, it's about, you need to go off, not I'm going to give you another load of cases. It's when so it's about, I think it's about just hearing them, listening to them, connected to them, and making sure they're okay. So for me, it's not about me, it's about them. Because if they're okay, then the team's going to be okay, and then the children are going to get a good service. So and that's all principle based, but it's all undercover. it's all ninja because there's no mention of the 3 principles in my team. Yes, I got them the little book of clarity for Christmas, and I got Inside Out Revolution they got for their birthdays, and they get, and I think I bought Jack's. I think 3 of them's got Somebody Should Have Told Us. Somebody needs to tell. Was it Somebody Should Have Told Us?
Somebody should have told us. Yeah.
Should Have Told Us, and Jack's new book. So that's banded around all over the place, and I ping over little webinars, but it's all covert. It's all covert. And if only at some level there was a connection with somebody that was at a top influential level to understand that this is the only way forward, then we'd have even more sustainability. We've got us 2 ninjas going along doing it and going into different. I mean, I'm circulating different authorities. I seem to do 2-year stints in authorities, but I'm not getting any younger, so I don't know any more I could do. And every one of them, I leave the footprint of the principles and the ripple effect. And there is sustainability because I check in, and there is still sustain there. But it's so important. It's so important that it just needs something a little bit bigger. Maybe, but if the principles, if we have no control, which we don't, it's up. So it's going where it wants to do. Well, maybe it's the pebble with the water and lots of pebbles and lots of people, and it's all just trickling out. But it's very important. And if anything, I can get a lot of thinking about and frustration about, why doesn't everybody know this? Why doesn't everybody know this?
I love that, Vinny, and I think you're right, the top influencers, but it's coming in at all levels, isn't it? And when you were talking, I was thinking what I particularly love to do as well as I'm really interested in sustainable families, family groups within communities. So often they've got, a family might have a couple of children who've got learning disabilities or behavioural issues or whatever. So working with that family, just connecting with them and helping them to see their own resilience and their own brilliance and what they're doing really well, because it's so easy to focus on what's going wrong and try and fix that. But if we can support the parents to actually, fan that flame of brilliance that they've all got, and you can see that, you can see the ripple effect of that. And actually, so what is going on well for you? Aren't you brilliant? What an amazing job you're doing. And it's not being patronising, because you can really see that. It's easy to see if we're looking at somebody's innate health. I mean, my strap line is, from innate health comes creative solutions, because that's what I see when a family starts settling and feeling more, I suppose, in tune with their innate well-being. The ideas they come up with are phenomenal. The support ideas or the creative ideas, rather than sitting there waiting for education or social care to provide them with stuff because they've been told that's how it works. When we actually say, no, it can come from you because you know best. And then you just see the effect on the family and the community, and they start coping better, they sleep better. It's wonderful to see that. So that's the bit I'm interested in as well, is the sustainable families, despite what's going on around them, despite the broken social services, the broken health services. So it's again constantly pointing people back to their own innate health, their own wisdom, their own common sense, and saying you're doing great. But what can we help with? But you're great. Not even you're doing great, you are great. People feel that, and it's new to them quite often.
Yeah.
They're not used to hearing that. So it might take a bit of getting used to. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what a different way of helping people, right?
Yeah.
As you say, most people are used to being told they're broken, there's something wrong with you, and here's how we're going to help you fix it. And what I'm hearing is that you're pointing people back to their innate health.
Yeah.
And I love that you use the word of resilience a lot. I forget about that a lot, actually, that word resilience. That is what innate health is really, isn't it? It's showing us how resilient we are already, and we've not been taught that, right?
No,
So if you
no.
point that out to somebody is really, really helpful. And as you say, it's kind of, to me, it's like it's simplicity in itself, right? It's very simple. Like, you have all the, you know, and you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. Really, there's nothing wrong with you. And the more that people can really hear that and understand that and feel it, then yeah, as you say, they wake up and oh, I didn't see it that way. Oh, I didn't. It's like a burden's lifted from them. Kind of, yeah.
Hugely, yeah. And it's interesting because this is a bit ninja as well. So a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend who works for a police service in London was given my name as a mindfulness practitioner because this friend thought that's what I did. So I went and had a meeting with the police service, and they were talking about mindfulness. So I didn't say that's not what I do. I talked about what I do, and we talked about resilience, and that's exactly what they're wanting at the moment. Where they're going to get the money from, who knows? And there's some work to be done before the program can happen. But that's what they heard. No, we're struggling. We know we're resilient. We know we've got amazing capacity to do well. We're all really passionate about our job, but we're struggling here. So actually, that will become probably a resilience program because it makes sense to do that. And they'll probably get money for that rather than if it was a mindfulness program or a health and wellbeing program. But I used to think of resilience as we all need to get tougher.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, me particularly. Come on, Mandy, you cry if there's something, something difficult. So get tougher. And it's like, oh my God, how mistaken was I on that one? I see resilience completely differently now.
We have a question. It's quite a long question by the looks of it, from Joan. So we've got another 5, 6, 7 minutes left, something like that. So are you ready? So Joan's asking, I have a family that has me especially challenged and wonder if you can offer some insight. So there's a young mother with diabetes. She had her first live birth in April after a previous stillbirth pregnancy due to diabetes. She developed chronic kidney disease during the pregnancy due to the diabetes. And the baby was born by C-section early, 1 month early. So she's bringing the baby into clinic for healthcare, but is neglecting her own follow-up care completely. Her provider asks her at each visit for her to get a checkup, but she has missed all scheduled appointments with the endocrinologist and the nephrologist. Outreach by the social worker has been unsuccessful, and now I am thinking I might invite her and her baby to a local restaurant for lunch just to make a connection. There is a rumour that she's using drugs, and she's nervous she may get drug tested, and the children's welfare would be called. That is what happened at the birth, and marijuana was discovered, which did not impact mum taking baby home or involve children's protection. So
that's a biggie.
Yeah.
Vinny?
It's your department.
It's your department. I'll follow up. But yeah.
For me, so if a social worker had come to me and said that that situation, I don't feel that anyone's connected with that mum. There are two things going parallel. One is the connection with the mum, that she understands that if she doesn't have her self-care and look up and get her medical treatment, which is going to enable her to protect her baby, then her baby will not be protected and will have to be protected by someone else, maybe the state, maybe another family member. So I think what I would do is I mean, I don't know in what capacity you'd have lunch with her, so I'm not sure about what the role is. So for me, it's about, I like something called a Family Good Conference that came, it's something that was introduced in New Zealand many, many years ago by the Maoris to try and get them to solve their own problems. Who's in the family network, first of all, and then I'd have a big family network meeting, which would be a Family Good Conference, and I would ask them to come up with a child protection plan, because if they couldn't, for them to solve their own problems, or if we're looking about what this whole webinar's been about, it's about this family must have the resources within it to resolve their own issues. So if there's diabetes, I'd like to know, obviously, what that's like. What is it induced by drugs? Is mum taking drugs? I think it's about, we need to connect with mum, because we really are only being told a version of what's going on. And I really want to know what's going on. I'd want to know. So there's two things. The child has to be protected, baby has to be protected, and mum needs to be well. She needs to be well to protect the baby. And the first thing is connect with her. Yes, go out to lunch with her. Find out what's really going on. If she is taking drugs, about what she's taking, how it impacts her on her parenting. I would then get baby. I don't know how well the baby is. I get medical of the baby to check how the baby was. And again, I'd look for the family to protect the baby. And if not, I then would consider when it comes to my level, initial child protection conference, to see, or they could manage it under, which is something child in need, which is and then it goes to child protection, to find out what needs to happen for this mum to look after this baby. What are we missing? There's something that we're not being told. There's something that you don't know. The connection's not there. It's when we connect, we'll find out. And wisdom, professional wisdom. Sorry, I hope that it's...
Thank you. No, thank you, Vinny. Yeah, I'm sure that's helpful. Well, I'd love to hear back from Joan, and if you've got something to add, Mandy, before we finish.
I will, and I think the first thought is your heart just goes out to her. What's going on, and things can look so complicated, and actually it can also be really simple. We need to find out what's going on, what's she scared of, what's going on for her, and how that happens will depend on the situation. Who else is involved? So often with some of the families I work with, it's the social worker that should go in. Well, is it? Sometimes it's the family aide at school. Sometimes it's the teaching assistant. Sometimes it's the lollipop man. It actually doesn't matter. So one of the first things is who's going to be able to have this conversation? Who's she close to? Who does she feel safe with? So, we don't know enough about the situation, but I think that the best thing we can do is settle, not get into our heads and get scared. So the first thing that we do is just we settle. We kind of lean back and actually remember that we're not in charge here, and just see, again, from innate health come creative solutions. When we're in our own innate health, when we're in our own connection, then we'll know what to do. I don't know if that's the more we get into fear and panic, the more we're disconnected from ourselves and therefore the person that we're supporting.
Yeah, Joan's come back and said that's very helpful, thank you. So you definitely answered her question, thank you. Well, isn't that interesting? Right at the end, just when I was right when we no questions today, no comments today.
Do you know what that's called in social work? It's called doorstep conversations. So it's when you've been sat with a client for like an hour, and then just as you're leaving, and then they come out with the big the big thing.
The important thing right at the end.
The important thing,
yeah. Wow. Well, that's blown by that time. We've got a couple of things to wrap up. But, thank you, ladies. It's been, as I suspected, a very, very rich conversation, and shared lots of wisdom there, I think.
Well, thank you. No, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah. Me too.